My mother never hugged me, not once, not in 62 years of her being on this earth. I swore on my grandmother Pearl's Bible, the one with the cracked leather spine and the pressed magnolia petal in Psalm 23, that my daughter would never know what that felt like. I swore it the night I brought Danielle home from Piedmont Hospital in 1984, the blue blanket still smelling like the nursery, her tiny fist curled around my pinky finger like she already knew she had to hold on tight in this world. I swore it again the day she turned 6 and came home crying because a little girl at school told her she couldn't be a princess because princesses aren't brown. I held her that day, held her until my arms went numb. I knew, I was breaking something, some long chain that ran back through my mother, and her mother, and her mother before that. All the way back to Georgia, red clay, and the Atlantic Ocean, and places we don't have names for anymore. I thought I had done it. And then this morning at 7:43 a.m., my daughter sent me a text message. 3 lines. Mama, Terrence and I have decided Zora won't be coming to your house on Saturdays anymore. I need some space. Please don't call during this time. I have read that message 47 times. I know it's 47 because I counted. Counting is a thing I do. I count the stairs when I climb them. I count the cars that pass my porch. I count the seconds between when I ask a question and when somebody answers. I've been counting since I was 5 years old, and I didn't know until last year, until my neighbor Gloria's daughter, who's a therapist up in D.C., explained it to me, that counting is what children do when they don't know what to do with the feelings in their body. My mother taught me not to know what to do with the feelings in my body, and somehow, without ever meaning to, without ever raising my voice or my hand, without ever doing a single thing I could name and point to, I taught my daughter the same thing. I'm sitting at my kitchen table right now, the one James and I bought from Sears in 1983, the one I refinished twice, the one my grandbaby Zora has eaten 1,000 chicken nuggets on. There's a drawing taped to my refrigerator. Zora drew it last month. It's me, tall with gray hair and my reading glasses pushed up on my head, holding my knitting needles. And underneath, in big crooked letters, she wrote, Grandma Andy, the best hugger. The best hugger. If my 8-year-old granddaughter thinks I'm the best hugger in the world, then why has my 42-year-old daughter just told me she can't bring her to my house anymore? I already know the answer. I've known it for about 3 weeks now. I just didn't want to say it out loud. But I'm going to say it now. To you. Whoever you are, listening to an old woman talk into her phone at 7 in the morning with her coffee gone cold. For 30 years I believed I had broken the curse. Turns out I just passed it down with a different face on it. Let me tell you about my mother. Her name was Ruth Mae Washington. Born Ruth Mae Johnson in Macon, Georgia, on March 14, 1935. She was the oldest of 6 children, and she lived to be 62 years old, and she died of breast cancer in a hospital bed in 1997 because she found the lump in 1995 and she never told anyone about it. Not her husband, not her sister, not me. She found it, and she decided, in the way my mother decided everything, that she would just carry it by herself. My mother grew up in a time and a place where Black women weren't allowed to be soft. I want you to understand what I mean by that. I'm not talking about a metaphor. I'm talking about a real place, in the real South, in the real year 1944, when my mama was 9 years old and she watched her daddy, my grandfather Elijah Johnson, get beat half to death by 4 white men in the back of a general store in Macon, Georgia, because he looked up when a white woman walked past him. He looked up. That's all. My grandfather didn't die that day, but something in him did. He came home and he sat on the porch for 11 years, not talking, not working, just sitting, until he finally laid down one night in 1955 and didn't wake up. And in those 11 years, my grandmother, my Mama Pearl, cleaned 3 white folks' houses a day to feed 6 children. She would leave the house at 4:30 in the morning, and she would come home at 9 o'clock at night, and in between, my Mama Ruth Mae raised her brothers and sisters, 9 years old raising a baby, 11 years old making collard greens for supper, 13 years old ironing her daddy's church shirts even though he hadn't been to church in 4 years. My mama learned something in that house. She learned it so deep, it became her skeleton. She learned that feelings are a luxury that Black folks cannot afford. She learned that if you let yourself cry, you won't be able to stop. And if you can't stop, you can't work. And if you can't work, your family starves. And if your family starves, That's on you, because the world is not coming to save you, baby. The world has made itself very clear about that. So my mama locked her feelings up in a box, and she threw away the key when she was about 12 years old, and she never went looking for it again. And then she had me in 1956, and she loved me the only way she knew how. She loved me by making sure I had clean clothes every single day. My socks were always white. My shoes were always polished with the little tin of kiwi polish she kept under the kitchen sink. My hair was always pressed and oiled and braided so tight my scalp ached, but I never looked uncared for. Not once. Not in 18 years. She loved me by teaching me to read when I was 4 years old. By the time I started kindergarten at Whiteford Elementary, I could read the newspaper. The Atlanta Journal, the Constitution, didn't matter. My mama sat me down at that kitchen table every night after supper, and she made me read to her. She couldn't read well herself. 3rd grade education. But she knew that I was going to need to read better than white folks if I was going to survive in the world she was sending me into. She loved me by saving every single penny she could from her job at the textile factory to send me to Spelman College. You hear me? Spelman, in 1974. That woman saved for 18 years. 18 years of skipping lunch, of making 1 chicken stretch to 3 meals, of darning her stockings until they were more darn than stocking, so I could go to Spelman. So I could walk those gates that Dr. King walked past. So I could be somebody. She loved me, y'all. Don't let me tell this story wrong. My mama loved me, but she never hugged me. She never said I love you. She never asked me how I felt about anything. When I was 7 years old and I came home crying because a white boy at the integrated school had called me the word, you know the word, I'm not going to say it, but you know. My mama took me by the shoulders and she set me down on the edge of the bathtub and she wiped my face with a washcloth. Not gentle, and she said, Andrea, stand up straight. Wipe your face. You do not let them see you cry. Ever. You hear me? Not ever. That's what they want. Don't you give it to them. I was 7, and I understood in that moment that my tears were dangerous, that my feelings were a door I could not open, because if I opened it, the whole world would come in and take something from me. I closed the door. I was 7 years old. And I closed the door, and I did not open it again for a very long time. When I was 16 and I got my period for the first time, in the middle of the night, in my own bed, and I was so scared I thought I was dying, my mother left a box of Kotex pads on my pillow in the morning with a little note that said, "This is what it is. Don't make a fuss." Don't make a fuss. When I was 22 years old and I graduated from Spelman College, the first person in my entire family line, going all the way back to ever hold a 4-year degree, my mother did not come to the graduation. She told me she had to work that day. She told me she was sorry. She told me to bring her a program. I found out 3 years later, when my Aunt Dorothy let it slip at a family reunion, that my mother had taken that day off from work. She sat at home all day, in the house on Ormond Street, and she did not come to my graduation. And when I asked Aunt Dorothy why, with my eyes full of tears I was trying not to let fall because I was a grown woman, and grown women don't cry about old hurts, Aunt Dorothy looked at me and she said, "Baby, your mama didn't know what to wear. She didn't think she had anything nice enough. She was ashamed to sit next to all those fancy folks at Spelman." My mother, who had saved for 18 years to send me there. She was ashamed to sit next to the mothers of the girls she had made sure I could be. I want you to hold on to that, because we're going to come back to it. We're going to come back to it in a way that is going to break my heart open in a few minutes, and I want you to be with me when it does. My mama died on September 9th, 1997. I was 41 years old. Danielle was 13. I was there at the end. So was my husband, James. God rest him. He passed in 2019, and I'll tell you about him too, because he was a good man. A good man. And my sister Loretta was there. And my mama's sister, Aunt Dorothy, the one who told me about the graduation. My mama was not afraid of dying. I want to say that. She was never afraid of anything that I could see. Even in that hospital bed, with the cancer having eaten through her chest and into her bones, with her body about 70 pounds and her hair gone from the chemo she only agreed to take in the last 4 months, my mama was not afraid. What she was at the end was quiet. She had always been quiet, but this was different. This was the quiet of someone who had something to say and had run out of time to figure out how to say it. The night before she died, I was alone with her in the room. Everybody else had gone down to the cafeteria. I was holding her hand. And I want you to understand this was strange for us. I had maybe held my mother's hand 3 times in my whole life. Her hand felt like a piece of tissue paper, like it would tear if I squeezed. And she looked at me and she opened her mouth and she said, her voice was almost gone. It was just air. She said, "Andrea, baby, there's a box in my bedroom, in the bottom drawer of the dresser. It's for you, after." That was all. She closed her eyes. She slept. And sometime around 5 in the morning, she stopped breathing, and the machine made the sound that machines make, and my mama was gone. I found the box 3 days later after the funeral. It was a shoebox, an old Tom McCann shoebox, probably 20 years old. It was tied with a piece of ribbon that had been white once and was now yellow. Inside the box was a notebook. Just one notebook. Black cover. The kind you buy at Walgreens for $1.99. I opened it. And y'all, my mother had been writing about me, every day, for 41 years. 400 pages of small, careful handwriting. My mama's handwriting, which I knew from grocery lists and birthday cards. 400 pages, starting on the day I was born. My baby came today. She is so little. Her fingers are so little. I am afraid I will break her. And going all the way up to 3 days before she died, when she must have been writing with the last strength she had. I am sorry, baby. I am sorry I could not say it. Please forgive your mother. Every page was full of things she thought about me, things she was proud of, things I had said that had made her laugh, things I had done that had made her worry, times she had watched me from the kitchen window, playing in the yard, and thought about how beautiful I was, times she had seen me cry and wanted to hold me, but could not figure out how to make her arms move. She wrote about my graduation. Listen to me. She wrote about my graduation. She wrote, "I did not go today. I was too shamed. I sat in my chair and I cried for the first time since 1965. I cried because my baby graduated college and I was not there. I cried because I ruined it. I cried because I do not know how to do this. Mama never showed me. I am sorry, Andrea. I am sorry. You will never know I am sorry because I do not know how to tell you." I sat on my mama's bedroom floor, on the carpet that still smelled like her Jergens lotion, and I read that notebook from beginning to end in one sitting. It took me 9 hours. I did not eat. I did not drink. I did not answer the phone when James called to check on me. I read 400 pages of my mother loving me, and when I got to the end, I closed that notebook, and I put it back in the Tom McCann shoebox, and I put the shoebox in the drawer of my own nightstand, and in the 29 years since then, I have never opened it again. Not once. I could not. I could not survive opening it a second time. Because the first time taught me something I did not want to know. It taught me that my mother had loved me my whole life. Loved me fiercely. Loved me in words I could have read and held and memorized. And I had never heard a single one of them out loud. Not one. Not "I love you." Not "I'm proud of you." Not "You are beautiful." 400 pages of it, locked up in a shoebox, because my mama did not know how to open her mouth and let it out. I want to tell you something, and I want you to hear me. When I held my daughter Danielle for the first time, on July 18th, 1984, at 4:42 in the afternoon, in room 314 of Piedmont Hospital, I made myself a promise. I looked down at that baby, at her perfect little face, at her eyes that were still that newborn gray-blue that hadn't decided what color they were going to be yet, and I said, "Baby, I promise you, you are going to know. Every single day of your life, you are going to know that your mama loves you. You will never have to guess. You will never have to wonder. I swear it." And for 30 years, I thought I had kept that promise. I said "I love you" every night before she went to bed. Every single night, until she left for college. I went to every piano recital, every basketball game, and my girl was not good at basketball. I'll tell you that right now. She was not. But I went. I sat in that gymnasium with my hands folded in my lap, and I clapped for every single thing she did. I made her breakfast every morning for 18 years. An egg sandwich with a little bit of hot sauce, the way she liked it, on toasted wheat bread. 18 years. 6,570-something breakfasts. I never missed one. Not when I had the flu. Not when James and I had fought the night before. Not when my mama died and I was moving through the world like a ghost. I never hit her. I never yelled at her. I never called her out of her name. I was a good mother. I am a good mother. And 3 weeks ago, my granddaughter Zora, 8 years old with her 2 puffs and her missing front tooth and her voice like bells, asked me a question that broke my heart into pieces I'm still picking up off the floor. I'm going to tell you what she asked. But first, I need to tell you what I did. What I have been doing for 42 years without knowing it. Because if you don't understand what I did, you won't understand why my daughter finally, after all these years, told me she needed space. I did not hit my daughter. I did not yell at her. I did not withhold food or clothes or education or opportunity. What I did was more subtle than that. What I did was the kind of thing that doesn't show up on any list of what's wrong. What I did was the kind of thing that a mother can do while telling herself, every single day, I am the best mama in the world. What I did was love my daughter with conditions. I didn't know they were conditions. I thought they were expectations. I thought they were standards. I thought they were the scaffolding that would hold my girl up in a world that was going to try very hard to tear her down. But Danielle felt them as conditions, and she felt them every day of her childhood, and she has been carrying them into her adulthood, into her marriage, into her motherhood, for 42 years. Let me give you an example. When Danielle was in 5th grade, she brought home a report card with a B in math. A B in 5th grade math. I did not yell at her. I did not punish her. I did not take away her Barbies or her Nintendo or her allowance. What I did was I looked at that report card and I set it down on the kitchen table, very quiet, and I did not say anything. For 3 days. For 3 days, I did not mention the report card. I made her breakfast. I drove her to school. I said I love you at bedtime. But I did not mention the report card, and I was cool. Not cold. Cool. A little bit of distance in my voice. A little bit of distance in my eyes. On the 3rd day, at supper, I said to her, and I remember the exact words because I have thought about them 1,000 times since. I said, "Baby, you know black girls don't get to be average. They made sure of that. You understand me?" She was 10 years old. She looked down at her plate. She said, "Yes, Mama." She got an A in math every single semester for the rest of her academic career. And I thought, I am doing it. I am raising a strong black woman. I am doing what my mama did for me, but better, because I'm telling her with love. I did not know until 6 weeks ago, that my daughter went into the bathroom that night and threw up her supper because she was so afraid of disappointing me. 10 years old. Y'all, she was 10 years old, and I was the mother who said I love you every night, and I was the mother who never hit her, and I was the mother who made the egg sandwiches. And I was also the mother who made her throw up her supper at 10 years old, because I could not handle a B in 5th grade math. There are more stories. There are so many more stories. But I'm going to tell you the one that finally got through to me. Because I want you to understand, I did not figure this out on my own. I did not wake up one morning and have some great revelation. I was not a hero in this story. I was the villain. For 42 years, without knowing it, I was the villain. And the person who finally told me the truth was not my therapist. I didn't have a therapist. Black women my age, we didn't do therapy. Therapy was for white people with too much time on their hands. That's what I thought. That's what my mama thought. That's what every woman in my church thought. The person who told me the truth was a little girl with 2 puffs and a missing front tooth. Her name is Zora. And the next thing I'm about to tell you is going to be hard for me to say. So I'm going to take a breath. And I'm going to ask you to take one with me, because what I'm about to tell you is the thing that changed everything. It's the thing that made me finally open the shoebox after 29 years and read my mama's notebook for the 2nd time. It's the thing that made me pick up the phone and call my daughter and beg her to let me listen, to let me, for the first time in 42 years, just listen. It started with a carton of milk. It was a Saturday afternoon, the last Saturday as it turned out. Though I did not know that yet. Zora was at my house. She'd been coming to me on Saturdays since she was about 3 years old. Danielle and Terrence would drop her off around 10 in the morning, and she'd stay with me until supper. It was our time. Grandma Andy and Zora time. We had a whole routine. We would make pancakes together. We would sit on the porch and watch the birds at my feeder. I would teach her how to knit. though Lord, she had no patience for it. That child's fingers were made for finger painting, not for counting stitches. And then around 2 o'clock, we would make cookies. Every Saturday, chocolate chip cookies, from the Toll House recipe on the back of the yellow bag, because why mess with what works? This particular Saturday, this was the 4th Saturday in February of last year, I remember because the dogwoods were just starting to bud. Zora was standing on her little stool at my kitchen counter, wearing the apron I'd sewn for her with her name embroidered on it in purple thread. She was pouring milk into the measuring cup. She was concentrating so hard. Her little tongue was poking out of the corner of her mouth the way Danielle's used to do when she was that age. And I remember thinking, Lord, she looks just like her mama. And then she slipped. The carton of milk tipped. Not a lot. Maybe half a cup of milk went sideways onto the counter and dripped down onto the linoleum floor. Zora froze. She froze the way a deer freezes when it hears a twig snap. Her little shoulders went up around her ears. Her eyes got big. She did not breathe. And I, automatically, without thinking, the way a fish swims, I said, "Oh, sweetie, it's okay. Let's just clean this up. But next time, hold the carton with 2 hands, okay?" My voice was gentle. My face was gentle. I was not angry. I was not even a little bit upset. It was just a little milk. I grew up spilling milk. James spilled more milk in his life than any grown man I ever knew. It didn't matter. But Zora did not move. She stood on that little stool, and she looked at me, and her eyes got shiny, and her bottom lip did that thing little kids' lips do when they're trying so hard not to cry. And then she said something I will remember until the day I die. She said, "Grandma Andy, why do you always add the but next time part?" I stopped moving. I had the dish towel in my hand. I had been reaching for the milk. I stopped. I said, "What do you mean, baby?" And Zora, 8 years old, 8 years old, y'all. Zora looked at me with those big, serious eyes, and she said, "Mommy says we don't have to say but after it's okay. Mommy says but makes okay mean nothing. Mommy says when somebody spills something, you just say it's okay, and then you stop. Because if you say but next time, then the person knows you're still a little bit mad." I could not speak. I put the dish towel down on the counter. I looked at my granddaughter, and I looked at the milk on the floor, and I looked at the kitchen I had stood in for 50 years, and I felt something inside my chest. I don't even know how to describe it to you. It was like something cracked. Not broke. Cracked. Like an eggshell with a hairline fracture down the side. I said, "Baby, come down off that stool." She came down, slow, still watching me. I sat down on the kitchen floor, right there on the linoleum. 70-year-old woman sitting on the kitchen floor in her good slacks, with a little bit of milk seeping into the knee of her pants. I sat down and I patted the floor next to me, and I said, "Come sit with Grandma." Zora sat down. She looked worried. I said, "Baby, can I ask you a question?" She nodded. I said, "Does your mama say that a lot? That but makes okay mean nothing?" Zora thought about it. She was a serious child. She is a serious child. She takes questions seriously. And after a minute she said, "Yes, Mommy says it a lot. Mommy and Daddy do this thing where they try to not say but. They call it the but rule." I said, that's a good rule." And then I asked her the question that I did not know I was going to ask until it came out of my mouth. I said, "Baby, when your mama was little like you, do you think I said but to her a lot? Do you think I made okay mean nothing for your mama when she was a little girl?" Zora looked at me. And I want you to understand something about this child. Zora is not a child who lies. She is not a child who tells you what you want to hear. Danielle and Terrence have raised her to tell the truth, and to tell it kindly, but to tell it. And Zora takes this very, very seriously. She looked at me for a long time. She was thinking. You could see her thinking. And then she said, "I don't know, Grandma. I wasn't there, but—" She stopped. I said, "But what, baby? You can tell me." She said, "But Mommy cries sometimes. After we leave your house. In the car. When she thinks I'm asleep in the back seat. I'm not always asleep. Sometimes I'm just pretending. I want to tell you what happened in my body when my granddaughter said those words. I want to tell you that my heart stopped. But it didn't. My heart kept beating. It kept beating, and my lungs kept breathing, and the clock on the kitchen wall kept ticking. What stopped was me. The me I had been for 42 years. The mother who said I love you every night. The mother who made the egg sandwiches. The mother who was nothing like her own mother. That me stopped. And in her place, there was a 70-year-old black woman sitting on a linoleum floor next to a puddle of milk, with the realization that her grown daughter had been crying in her car, driving home from her mama's house, for Lord knows how long. Years, maybe. Maybe since Zora was a baby. Maybe since Zora was born. Maybe since before that. Maybe my daughter had been crying in her car on the way home from my house for her whole adult life, and I had never known, because I had never asked, because I had never thought to ask, because in my family, we did not ask those questions. My mama did not ask me those questions, and I had not asked my daughter because I had learned from my mama that those questions were not ours to ask. Zora was watching me. I think she was worried she had said the wrong thing. I reached out, and I put my hand on her little hand, and I said, Zora, baby, thank you for telling me. You did not do anything wrong. You hear me? Nothing. You did exactly right. She nodded. Serious. I said, can I ask you one more question? She nodded again. I said, when your mama cries in the car, does she seem sad? Or does she seem something else? Zora thought, and she said, she seems tired, Grandma. She seems really, really tired. I'm going to stop here for a minute. I'm going to stop here because I need you to understand what that word did to me. Tired. Not angry, not sad, not resentful. Tired. My daughter, my Danielle, my baby girl, who I had carried for 9 months and labored for 22 hours and nursed until she was 18 months old. My daughter was tired from being my daughter. Tired. And you know what I thought of in that moment, sitting on that kitchen floor? I thought of my mama. I thought of my mama at the end of her life in that hospital bed, weighing 70 pounds, with her hand like tissue paper in mine. My mama had been tired too. My mama had been tired her whole life. Tired from being Ruth Mae Johnson, the oldest of 6 who raised her siblings. Tired from being Ruth Mae Washington, the factory worker who saved for 18 years so her baby girl could go to Spelman. Tired from being the woman who held her feelings in a box so tight they gave her the cancer that killed her. And her mama, my Mama Pearl, had been tired too, cleaning 3 houses a day, walking home in the dark, pressing her children's clothes at midnight by the light of a kerosene lamp because the electric had been cut off again. And her mama, my great-grandmother, whose name was Hannah, who I never met, had been tired too. All of us, all the way back. Tired women, raising tired women, raising tired women. And somehow I had thought, I had believed, that I had broken it. That by saying, I love you, and making the breakfast and going to the basketball games, I had stopped the clock. But Zora had just told me something I had been unable to see with my own eyes. The clock had not stopped. The clock had just learned to whisper. That evening, after Terrence came to pick up Zora at 6 o'clock, I sat on my front porch in the dark. It was cold. February cold. I had my shawl around my shoulders, the purple one James had given me for Christmas in 2011, and I had a cup of tea in my hand that had gone cold about 40 minutes ago. And I just sat there. I sat there until 8:30. I did not turn on the porch light. I did not answer the phone when Gloria called to see if I wanted to come over for supper. I just sat there, in the dark, and I thought about my daughter crying in her car. Now, I want to tell you about Gloria, because Gloria is important to this story, and I haven't introduced her properly yet. Gloria Henderson is my best friend. Has been for 30 years. She lives 2 doors down from me, in the little brick house with the magnolia tree in the front yard. Her husband, Calvin, passed about 5 years before my James did. And ever since then, me and Gloria have been each other's people. We go to church together. Ebenezer Baptist, the one Dr. King preached at, though it's moved since then. We go to the Kroger together on Tuesdays. We sit on each other's porches in the evenings. We know each other's prescription medications by heart. Gloria is a year older than me, 71. She's a retired nurse. She worked at Grady Hospital for 34 years. She has seen everything a human being can see, and she does not flinch from anything. And Gloria has a daughter named Vanessa. Vanessa is about Danielle's age, a couple of years younger, I think. Vanessa lives in D.C., and she is a therapist. A licensed clinical social worker, actually. She specializes, and this is the part that matters, she specializes in intergenerational trauma in Black families. Intergenerational trauma. I had never heard those words together before Gloria started saying them about 3 years ago. I didn't know what they meant. I thought trauma was what happened to soldiers in war, or to women who had been beaten by their husbands. I did not know that trauma could be quiet. I did not know that trauma could be gentle. I did not know that trauma could look like a mama saying I love you every night, and still, somehow, teaching her daughter that her feelings were a burden. Gloria had been trying to tell me in her Gloria way for about a year. She would send me articles. She would play me podcasts on her phone. She would drop little comments in the middle of our Tuesday trips to the Kroger. Things like, "Girl, Vanessa was just telling me about this thing she calls the achievement trap. You ever heard of it?" And I would say, "Mm-hmm." And I would change the subject, because I did not want to hear it. I did not want to hear it because some part of me, some deep, deep part, already knew, and I was not ready to know that I knew. But on a Sunday afternoon, about 3 weeks before the carton of milk, Gloria finally said it plain. We were at her house. We had just come back from church. She was making us tea, and she had her phone on the kitchen counter, and she was playing a podcast. It was Vanessa's voice. Vanessa does podcasts now, apparently. Vanessa was interviewing another Black woman therapist about, you guessed it, the achievement trap. Vanessa was saying something like, so many Black mothers of this generation, they genuinely believe that pressure is love, because pressure is what their mothers gave them, and their mothers survived, and they survived. So they pass it down, and they call it love. And it is love, but it's love with a cost that the daughter carries in her body for the rest of her life. I was listening. I was pretending not to listen, but I was listening. And Gloria, without looking up from the tea she was pouring, without even raising her voice, Gloria said, "Girl, this sound like somebody we know?" I said, "Who?" Gloria did not say anything. She just looked at me. And I knew. And Gloria knew I knew. And neither of us said anything else about it that afternoon. We drank our tea. We talked about her nephew's wedding. We watched a little bit of Judge Judy. And then I went home. But that night, I lay in bed next to the empty space where James used to sleep, and I stared at the ceiling, and I thought, oh Lord, what have I done? Now you understand the background. Now let me tell you about the conversation I was not supposed to hear. This was 10 days after the milk on the kitchen floor. I had not been sleeping well. I had been walking around my house like a ghost, picking things up and putting them down, opening the refrigerator and forgetting what I was looking for. I had not called Danielle. She had not called me. On a Tuesday afternoon, I realized I had been holding on to a book of hers, a paperback copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. The book that Zora, my granddaughter, was named after. Danielle had lent it to me 2 months before, and I had not returned it. It was sitting on my end table in the living room, and every time I looked at it, I thought of my daughter. I decided I would drive it over. I did not call first. That is important. I did not call first because in our family, in the neighborhood I grew up in, you did not call first. You dropped by. You brought a casserole. You sat on the porch for 20 minutes. That was how we did. That was how my mama did, and her mama before her, and it had never occurred to me that my daughter might live differently. Danielle and Terrence live in Kirkwood too, not far from me, about a 15-minute drive. They bought their house in 2016, a little craftsman bungalow with a big front porch and a magnolia tree that blooms white in May. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon when I pulled up. I parked across the street because there was a car in their driveway I didn't recognize. I figured Danielle had a friend over. I got out. I had the book in my hand. I walked across the street. And as I got close to the porch, I could hear Danielle's voice. She was on the phone. She was sitting on the porch swing, the one James had helped Terrence hang, one of the last things James ever did before the stroke. And she was on the phone, and she did not see me. I stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. I should have gone up. I should have said, "Hey, baby, just dropping off your book." I should have knocked on the porch railing and announced myself, but I did not. I stood there because I heard my daughter say a name that I had never heard her say before. She said, "I know, Dr. Abernathy, I know, but I can't tell her." Dr. Abernathy. My daughter was talking to somebody named Dr. Abernathy, and Dr. Abernathy knew something about me that my daughter could not tell me. I stood at the bottom of those porch steps with a paperback book in my hand, and I listened to my daughter talk to her therapist. "Dr. Abernathy, you don't understand. If I tell her, she's going to make it about her. She's going to cry. And then I'm going to have to comfort her. That's how it always works. That's how it has always worked. It's been like that since I was 9 years old, and I came home and told her I was being bullied at school, and she cried so hard I had to put my arms around her, and she said, "I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. I'm a bad mother." And the whole afternoon became about her needing me to tell her she was a good mother. I was 9. I was 9 years old, and I had to hold my mother. I put my hand on the porch railing. I needed to hold on to something. Danielle kept going. Her voice was tired. That word again. Tired. I love my mother. I want to be clear about that. Dr. Abernathy, I love her so much. She was not a bad mother. I want you to understand. She made me breakfast every single morning. Every morning. She came to everything I ever did. She told me she loved me every night. She was not cruel. She was not absent. A pause. Dr. Abernathy must have been talking. Then Danielle again. I know. That's what makes it so hard. Because if she had been cruel, I could cut her off. I could draw a line, but she wasn't cruel. She just made me feel like I had to earn it. All of it. The love, the approval, the breakfast, the everything. I had to be good enough. I had to be smart enough. I had to be strong enough. I had to be the Washington woman she needed me to be. And when I wasn't, when I had a hard day, when I cried, when I wanted to do something she didn't approve of, she would get quiet. She wouldn't say anything. She would just get quiet. And the quiet was worse than yelling. The quiet told me I had failed her. Another pause. Then my daughter said something that made my knees almost give out. She said, "And now I'm doing it to Zora. I catch myself, Dr. Abernathy. I'll say, 'Oh, Zora, that's so nice,' but..." And I stop. I stop mid-sentence, because I hear my mother, and I don't want Zora to grow up the way I grew up. I don't want Zora to grow up tired. I don't want Zora to spend her 20s and her 30s going to therapy trying to figure out why she can't enjoy her own success. I don't want her to be 42 years old and crying on the phone to her therapist about her grandmother. I can't give her what my mother gave me. I have to stop. I was crying. I was crying silently, standing at the bottom of the porch steps, in the middle of a February afternoon, with the dogwoods budding above me. Danielle said, "So yes, Dr. Abernathy, I think I have to. I think I have to tell her we need to step back, at least from the Saturdays, at least for a while, because every time Zora comes back from her house, I see the little things my mother is doing, with love. All of it with love. But they are the same things. They are the same exact things. And I cannot let my daughter become me. I love my mother too much, and I love my daughter too much to keep letting this happen." A long pause. Then Danielle said, very quiet, I know it's going to break her heart. I know. But I think my heart has been broken for 40 years, and nobody noticed. And if I don't do this now, Zora's heart is going to be broken too. And I will not let that happen." I turned around. I walked back across the street. I got in my car. I did not drop off the book. I sat in my car for 45 minutes on that street in Kirkwood, under a dogwood tree that was starting to bloom, and I cried the way I had not cried since my mother died in 1997. I cried for my daughter. I cried for myself. I cried for my mother, who had written 400 pages of love into a notebook she could not show me. I cried for Mama Pearl, cleaning 3 houses a day. I cried for Hannah, my great-grandmother, whose face I had never seen. I cried for all of us, all the tired women. And then I drove home. That night, I did something I had not done in 29 years. I went into my bedroom. I opened the bottom drawer of my nightstand. I took out the Tom McCann shoebox with the yellowed ribbon. I untied the ribbon. I took out the notebook. I put it on my lap, and I opened it to the very last page. I read for the first time in 29 years the last words my mother ever wrote. "I am sorry, baby. I am sorry I could not say it. Please forgive your mother." And I said out loud, to the empty bedroom, to the ghost of my mother, to the memory of a woman who had loved me in a shoebox for 41 years, I said, "Mama, I forgive you. I forgive you. And I need you to help me. I need you to help me do the thing you could not do. I need you to help me tell my baby I am sorry. And I sat on the edge of my bed, in my nightgown, with my mama's notebook in my lap, and I started to write. I wrote for 6 hours. I wrote 11 drafts of a letter to my daughter. The first draft was 2,000 words. It was an explanation. It was a history. It was a defense. It was, baby, you have to understand, my mother never, and you have to know, I was trying to, and I did the best I could with what I had. I tore it up. The second draft was 1,500 words. It was still a defense. Softer, but a defense. I tore it up. By the 6th draft, I had 600 words. They were better, but I could still hear my own voice in them. The voice that wanted to be understood, that wanted to be forgiven, that wanted my daughter to know I had tried. I tore it up. By the 9th draft, I had 200 words, and I realized something. I realized that every single draft, even the short ones, had the word but in it. I love you, but I am so sorry, but I never meant to, but every draft. And I heard my granddaughter Zora's voice in my head saying, but makes okay mean nothing. So I started over. And I wrote the 10th draft with one rule, no but. It was 87 words. I read it out loud to myself 3 times. And then I copied it, in my best handwriting. The handwriting my mama had taught me when I was 4 years old at the kitchen table, onto a piece of cream-colored stationery I had been saving for 30 years for I don't know what. I put it in an envelope. I wrote Danielle's address on the front. I put a stamp on it. And the next morning, a Wednesday, cold, sun just coming up, I walked 2 blocks to the blue mailbox on the corner of Hosea Williams Drive and College Avenue, and I dropped that letter in. I did not know if my daughter would read it. I did not know if she would respond. I did not know if I had said the right thing. I just knew that for the first time in 42 years, maybe for the first time in my whole life, I had written something to another person without asking for anything back. The letter said this: Danielle, I heard you talking to Dr. Abernathy on Tuesday. I came to your house to drop off your book. I did not mean to listen. I listened. You do not have to manage me anymore. I do not know how to be a mother who does not need to be taken care of by her child. I never learned. My mother never taught me. My grandmother never taught my mother. I am not writing this so you will respond. I am writing this so you will know. I am seeing it now. For the first time. I will wait. Whether you need a week, a year, or 10 years, I will wait. Mama Andy, 10 days I waited. 10 days. I did not call her. I did not text her. I did not drive by her house. I did not ask Gloria to ask Vanessa if Vanessa had heard anything through the therapist grapevine. I did not do any of it. I sat in my house. I watered my plants. I went to church on Sunday, and I sat in the pew where James used to sit, and I prayed. Not for Danielle to forgive me, but for me to be strong enough for whatever she needed me to be. And on the 10th day, on a Saturday morning at 11:14 a.m., I remember the exact minute because my grandfather clock in the hall was about to chime the quarter hour. My phone rang. It was Danielle. I sat down in James's chair at the kitchen table, the chair I always sat in when I needed to be brave. I answered. I said, "Hello, baby." And my daughter, my 42-year-old daughter, who I had carried for 9 months and loved for 42 years and hurt for 42 years without knowing it, my daughter took a long, shaking breath, and she said, "Mama, can we talk?" And I said, "Yes, baby, I'm listening." And for the next 47 minutes, for the first time in our whole lives together, I did not say anything at all. I just listened. I want to tell you something about that phone call. I want to tell you that I was calm, that I was wise, that I was the kind of mother a therapist would point to and say, yes, that's how you do it. But I was not any of those things. I was a 70-year-old woman sitting at a kitchen table, holding a phone with a hand that was shaking so bad I had to press it against my ear just to keep it there. I had sweat on the back of my neck. I had a piece of toast I had made 2 hours ago, sitting on a plate in front of me, gone cold and hard. I had not eaten since the letter. And when my daughter said, "Mama, can we talk?" I felt every single cell in my body rise up and want to speak. Baby, of course we can talk. Baby, I love you. Baby, I am so sorry. Baby, you don't know. You don't know how hard it was for me. You don't know what I was working with. My mother never, all of it, every word, sitting right there on my tongue, pressing against my teeth, wanting out. And I swallowed it. I swallowed it the way I had been swallowing things my whole life. Except this time, I wasn't swallowing my own feelings. I was swallowing my need to be understood. I was swallowing my need to be forgiven. I said, "Yes, baby, I'm listening." And then I shut my mouth, and I kept it shut for 47 minutes. My daughter cried for the first 3 of those minutes. Just cried. The way people cry when they have been holding something in for a very, very long time, and they finally are allowed to put it down. Ugly crying. Not the crying you do in a movie, real crying. The kind where you can barely breathe and your nose runs and you have to stop and blow it and start over. I did not fill the silence. I had been practicing, sitting on my couch for 10 days, imagining this phone call, imagining all the ways I would want to jump in, to soothe her, to fix it, to make her feel better. Because here is the thing I had learned, standing at the bottom of her porch steps on that February afternoon. When I made her feel better, I was not making her feel better. I was making myself feel better. I was taking the pain of her being in pain, and I was turning it around so I didn't have to sit with it. My mother had done the same thing in her own way. My mother had said, "Stand up straight, wipe your face," because she could not bear to see me cry, because my tears reminded her of all the tears she had locked up in the box inside her chest. I had done the softer version. I had said, "Don't cry, baby. You're stronger than this. Come here, let Mama fix it." And the message was the same. Your tears are too much for me. Put them away. So I did not speak. I let her cry. And when she could finally talk, my Danielle, my serious, brilliant, accomplished Danielle, who passed the Georgia bar on her first try and made partner at 38 and argued a case in front of the 11th Circuit when she was 35. My Danielle told me things I had never heard. She told me about 5th grade, about throwing up after the conversation about the B in math. She said, "Mama, I didn't tell you because I was afraid you would think I was making it up to make you feel bad." But it happened. It happened for a week. Every time I ate, I threw it up. I thought I was sick. I thought I was dying. But I was just trying to get the feeling out of my body. I didn't know what else to do. I did not speak. My hand was pressed to my mouth. I did not speak. She told me about the piano teacher, Mrs. Holloway. You remember Mrs. Holloway? She lived over on Oakview. She gave lessons for $10 a week. I sent Danielle to her for 5 years. Danielle told me that when she was 12, Mrs. Holloway had said to her at the end of a lesson, "Baby, you don't really love this piano, do you?" And Danielle had said, "No, ma'am." And Mrs. Holloway had said, "Honey, you should quit. Life is too short to spend it doing something you don't love." And Danielle had gone home and she had thought about it, and she had decided to quit. And then she had come downstairs to tell me, and she had gotten to the kitchen door, and she had seen me, sitting at the table, looking at a photograph of her at the piano recital, smiling to myself. And she had turned around and gone back upstairs, and she had played the piano for 6 more years, until she left for college, because she could not do it. She could not take that smile off my face. She was 12. She told me about the bullying in 9th grade. She told me about the girl at Spelman who had hurt her. She told me about a professor at Emory Law who had told her she wasn't ready for the career she was about to have, and the way that comment had lived inside her head for 20 years, whispering to her every time she walked into a courtroom. She told me about Terrence. She told me that she had been afraid, when she first started dating him, that I wouldn't think he was good enough, that he hadn't gone to the right schools, that his people weren't the right people. She told me that for the first 2 years they were together, she had managed me carefully, had shown me the parts of Terrence I would approve of, had hidden the parts she thought I wouldn't. She told me that Terrence knew, that he had always known, and that he had stayed with her anyway because he loved her and because he understood. "Mama," she said, "Terrence is the best man I have ever known, and I almost didn't marry him because I couldn't figure out how to tell you that he worked in tech instead of medicine. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Do you understand how sick that is?" I said. And this was the only thing I said in 47 minutes. The only thing? I said, "I hear you, baby. I hear you." And she kept going. And then, about 32 minutes in, she told me something that undid me. She said, "Mama, in 2015, before Zora, I was pregnant." I stopped breathing. I was about 11 weeks. Me and Terrence, we were so excited. We hadn't told anybody. We were waiting until 12 weeks, like they tell you to. And on a Wednesday, I went to work, and I was in the bathroom at the office, and I started bleeding. I went to the hospital. I lost the baby. They told me it was just one of those things. Nothing I did. Nothing I could have prevented. I was crying. I could not stop myself. But I did not make noise. I let the tears come and I kept listening. I came home from the hospital that afternoon. Terrence picked me up. We sat in our house and we cried and we held each other and we talked about what we were going to do. And I decided, that I would tell you at Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving 2015. I remembered it. I was going to tell you after dinner. I had it planned. I knew where I was going to sit. I knew what I was going to say. I was going to tell you because I needed you, Mama. I needed my mother. I had just lost a baby, and I needed my mother. She stopped. She breathed. And I came over that afternoon to help you cook. And we were in the kitchen, and you were mashing the potatoes. And I opened my mouth. I was going to say it. I was going to say, Mama, I need to tell you something. And just as I was about to say it, you turned to me, and you said, she started crying again, and I remembered. Lord in heaven, I remembered. I remembered exactly what I had said. I had turned to her, with the potato masher in my hand, and I had said, Baby, taste these for me. Are they stiff enough? Aunt Dorothy likes them stiff. Last year she said mine were too loose. That's what I had said. That's what I had said to my daughter, who had been standing in my kitchen 10 days after losing her baby, trying to find the words to tell her mother. I had asked her about the potatoes. Mama, Danielle said on the phone, 47 minutes into our conversation, 42 years into our life together. Mama, I tasted the potatoes. I told you they were fine, and I did not tell you about the baby. I did not tell you for 11 years, not until last month, when I finally told Dr. Abernathy, and she asked me why I had never told you, and I said I didn't know, but I knew. I knew, Mama. I knew because in that moment with the potatoes, you showed me that Aunt Dorothy's opinion about the potato consistency was more important than whatever I was about to say. And I was 29 years old, and I had just lost my first baby, and I decided in that moment that my mother was never going to be a person I could bring my real self to. I was sobbing now. I could not hold it, but I still did not speak, because it was not my turn to speak. Danielle said, Mama, I am not telling you this to hurt you. I am telling you this because I need you to understand. I have been managing you for my entire adult life. I have been bringing you a small, curated version of me for 30 years, and I cannot do it anymore. Because if I keep doing it, I am going to teach Zora that she has to manage her mother. And I will not. I will not. She was crying too hard to finish. I was crying too hard to listen. And then my daughter said the thing I had been waiting for her to say. The thing I had been afraid of. The thing I had known was coming. From the first moment I stood at the bottom of her porch steps. She said, Mama, I don't know if we can fix this. I don't know if it's fixable, but I need to try. Because I love you. And I don't want to lose you. And I don't want Zora to lose you either. I need you to be different. I don't know if you can. But I need you to try. I took a breath. It was my turn. For the first time in 47 minutes, it was my turn. And I want you to understand, in this moment, there were 1,000 things I could have said. I could have explained. I could have apologized. I could have told her about my mother, about Mama Pearl, about the shoebox, about the notebook. I could have tried to make her understand that I had not meant it, that I had loved her every day, that I had been trying. I did not say any of those things. I said this. Danielle, I heard you. Every word. I heard you. I am sorry about the baby. I am sorry I asked about the potatoes. I am sorry you had to hold it for 11 years. I will do whatever you need me to do, whatever that looks like, and I am not going to ask you for anything right now. I just want to know. Is there something I can do today to start? Anything. You tell me. There was a long silence. And then Danielle said, quiet. Mama, would you come have coffee with me? Just me and you. No Terrence, no Zora, just us. I said, yes, baby. Whenever you want, I'll come anywhere. You just say when. And she said, Saturday, 11 o'clock. There's a place in Decatur on Ponce de Leon called Java Monkey. I'll meet you there. I said, I will be there. And she said, and this is the thing that tells you who my daughter is. who she has always been, who she was when she was little, even when I didn't know how to see her. She said, "Mama, I love you. I'm sorry this is hard." My baby, who I had hurt for 42 years, was apologizing to me for the conversation being hard. I said, "Baby, you don't apologize. Not for this. Not ever. You hear me?" And we hung up. And I sat at that kitchen table for another hour, just sitting, with the phone in my hand, with my eyes closed, feeling something that I did not have a name for. I think it was grief. I think it was the grief I had been carrying for my whole life. Grief for a mother who loved me in a shoebox. Grief for a daughter who loved me from a distance. Grief for the woman I had been too afraid to be. And I think for the first time, I was letting it out. Java Monkey, Saturday morning, 11 o'clock. I got there at 10:40. I was wearing the sweater Danielle had given me for Christmas in 2019, a soft blue cardigan that I had always been afraid to wear because I thought I would get something on it. I had worn it maybe twice, but that morning I put it on because I wanted my daughter to see that I had saved it, that I had known somewhere, even when I was being wrong, that what she gave me mattered. I got us a table in the corner, by the window. I ordered a coffee, and I did not drink it. Danielle walked in at exactly 11. She was wearing jeans and a plain black t-shirt, and her hair pulled back in a puff. No makeup. I don't think I had seen my daughter without makeup since she was 16 years old. She looked young. She looked tired. She looked like my baby. She sat down across from me. She said, "Hi, Mama." I said, "Hi, baby." And for a long minute, neither of us said anything. We just looked at each other. In a way we had not looked at each other in, I don't know, maybe ever. Maybe not since she was a newborn in my arms in 1984, and we had stared at each other like we were the only two people in the world. Finally, she said, "I don't know where to start." And I said, "You don't have to start. I'll start." And I told her. I told her about my mother, not the version of my mother I had told her about for 40 years. The strong black woman, the Spelman savings woman, the no-nonsense grandmother, the mythological Ruth May. I told her the real one. I told her about the day I was 7 and I came home crying about the white boy and the word, and my mother sat me on the edge of the bathtub and told me not to let them see me cry. I told her about the Kotex pads on the pillow. I told her about the graduation my mother did not attend because she did not know what to wear. And then I told her about the shoebox. "Danielle," I said, she said, "there's a notebook. It's in a shoebox in my nightstand. It's been there for 29 years. Your grandmother wrote in it every single day for 41 years. She wrote about me. She wrote 400 pages about how much she loved me. And she never, not one time, said any of it out loud." My daughter's eyes filled up with tears. "I read it once," I said. "One time, the week she died, and I could not bear to read it again, because the first time taught me something I did not know how to carry, that my mother had loved me my whole life, in words I could have read and memorized and held against my chest, and I had never heard a single one of them out loud." I took a breath. "Last week," I said, "after I got off the phone with you, I took the shoebox out again. For the first time in 29 years. I have not read the notebook yet. I wasn't ready yet, but I took it out, and I sat with it on my lap, and I realized something, baby. I realized that I have been doing the exact same thing to you that my mother did to me. Different, but the same." Danielle was crying quietly. She was not trying to stop. "My mother," I said, "loved me in a box. She could not get it out. I loved you. I love you out loud. I said the words. I made the breakfasts. I came to the games. But I loved you with conditions, baby. I loved a version of you that I needed you to be. And every time you fell short of that version, I got quiet. And the quiet was a prison. The same prison my mother put me in, just with nicer furniture. I stopped. I looked at my daughter. And I said the thing I had been practicing saying for a week. The hardest thing. The thing I had never said to her. Had never said to anyone in my whole life. I said, "You are right, Danielle, you are right, and I am sorry." And I closed my mouth, and I did not say but. I did not say but I did my best. I did not say but my mother. I did not say but you have to understand. I did not say but I love you. I just sat there with my hands on the table, and I let the truth be the whole truth. Danielle was crying, hard. Her shoulders were shaking. After a long time, she reached across the table and she took my hand. And then she reached into the bag she had brought with her and she pulled out something. It was a stack of paper, bound with a rubber band, maybe 200 pages. She slid it across the table. She said, "Mama, I wrote a book." I looked at the stack of paper. On the front, in her handwriting, was a title, "The Weight of Being Loved." I said, "Baby?" She said, "Let me finish. I wrote it over the last 3 years. It's a memoir. It's about being a black woman in my generation. It's about being a daughter. It's about Zora. It's about you, Mama. It's about all of us." I was crying again. "I never told you I was writing it," she said, "because I was afraid you would ask me when I was going to publish it, or if I had an agent, or if I had thought about the title, or whether it would sell. And I couldn't. I couldn't have those conversations with you. I just wanted to write it. I just wanted to do something that wasn't for you. That was for me." She took a breath. "I'm not asking you to read it, Mama. I don't need you to read it. I wanted you to know it exists. I wanted you to know that the Washington women in this family, we don't just survive. We don't just achieve. We make things. We write. And I wrote this. And I wanted you to know." I looked at the stack of paper on the table. 237 pages. My daughter's work. 3 years of her life. Something she had made for herself, without me watching, without me judging, without me turning it into a project we were doing together. I did not ask when it would be published. I did not ask if she had an agent. I did not ask about the title. I looked at my daughter, across that table in Java Monkey, in the late morning sun, in February of the year she turned 42, and I said, "Danielle, can I hug you?" My daughter stood up. She walked around the table, and for the first time since she was, I don't even know, since she was a child, maybe, since she was small enough to fit in my lap, she hugged me, really hugged me. Not the polite hug she had been giving me for 20 years, the real hug, the hug that my mother had never been able to give me, the hug I had been trying to give Danielle her whole life and had never somehow quite gotten right. And I held my daughter in a coffee shop in Decatur, and I cried into her shoulder, and she cried into mine. And I thought, for just a second, I thought I felt my mama standing behind me. I thought I felt Ruth Mae Washington, who never hugged me in 62 years, standing behind me with her hand on my back, helping me hold her granddaughter, helping me be the mother she had not known how to be. I don't know if that was real. I don't believe in that kind of thing usually. I'm a Baptist. We don't talk to the dead. But I will tell you what I felt. I felt 170 years of Washington women. Hannah, who I never met. Mama Pearl, who cleaned 3 houses a day. Ruth Mae, who wrote 400 pages in a shoebox. Me, and Danielle. All of us in that hug. All of us, finally letting go. 1 year later, it is a Saturday afternoon in late March. I am at Danielle and Terrence's house in Kirkwood. The magnolia in their front yard is just starting to bloom. The sun is warm. Zora is 9 now. She turned 9 in January, and she has lost another front tooth, and she is in the backyard, playing with her friend Maya from next door. I am sitting on the back porch with my daughter. Things are not perfect. I want to tell you that. Because I don't want you to think this story has a fairy tale ending, where the mother says sorry and everything is magically healed. That is not how it works. That is not how it has worked for me and Danielle. There are still moments. There are still Tuesdays when I hear myself about to say something that I learned from my mother, and I have to bite my own tongue to stop it. There are still moments when Danielle feels the old pull of managing me, and she has to text me afterward and say, "Mama, I caught myself doing the thing. Just so you know." And I text her back, "Thank you for telling me, baby. I caught myself doing it too. We are both in therapy now, me and Danielle." That's right. I said it. I, Andrea Washington, 71 years old, go to therapy every Thursday at 2 o'clock. My therapist's name is Dr. Marcia Holloway, not the piano teacher, a different Holloway, and she is a black woman about 55 years old, and she specializes in intergenerational trauma, and she is helping me unpack things I did not know I was carrying. When I first told Gloria I was going to therapy, Gloria laughed so hard she almost choked on her tea. She said, "Girl, at your age, I thought you said therapy was for white people with too much time on their hands." I said, "Gloria, the time is now or never." And Gloria said, "Amen, sister. Sign me up." So now Gloria is in therapy too. We go on Thursdays at the same time. We meet at Kroger afterward and we talk about what our therapist said and we laugh and we cry a little bit and we go home. Danielle and I have a new thing we do. Every Sunday afternoon I come over to her house and we read my mother's notebook together. We have been doing it for 6 months. We read 2 or 3 pages at a time. We cry sometimes. We laugh sometimes. We stop and talk about what the words mean. Last Sunday we read the entry from September 14th, 1965, the day I learned to read. My mother wrote, "Andrea read Goodnight Moon today. She read it serious, like a professor. I wanted to tell her I was proud, but I was afraid I would cry. I have not cried in 30 years. I did not know if I could stop if I started." Danielle put the notebook down and she looked at me and she said, "Mama, Grandma Ruth was afraid of her own feelings." And I said, "Yes, baby, she was." And Danielle said, "And so were you." And I said, "Yes, baby, I was." And Danielle said, "And so am I, sometimes, still, but I don't have to be. And Zora doesn't have to be, ever." We sat with that for a while, and then we closed the notebook, and we went and got Zora from the backyard, and we made cookies, chocolate chip, from the Toll House recipe on the back of the yellow bag. And when Zora spilled the milk this time, because she did, because she is still 8 years old, well, 9 now, and 9-year-olds spill milk, I said, "Oh, sweetie, it's okay." And I did not say but. I did not say anything else. I just handed her the paper towels and she cleaned it up and we kept baking. I want to tell you one more thing. 3 weeks ago, Danielle's book was published. The Weight of Being Loved by Danielle Washington Brooks. A small press in Atlanta picked it up. A black woman owns the press. Her name is Nadine, and she called me on the phone after she read the manuscript, and she said, "Mrs. Washington, you know your daughter is a writer? Like a real writer. Like we're going to win something with this book." I said, "Ma'am, I have known my daughter was a writer since she was 4 years old, and she wrote a story about a caterpillar who wanted to be the president. I just didn't know how to tell her." The book has a dedication. Danielle wouldn't tell me what it said. She told me I had to buy the book and read it myself. So last week, I drove to Charis Books in Decatur, the black woman-owned bookstore that had a whole stack of her books in the window, and I bought 3 copies. One for me, one for Gloria, one for the shelf in my living room where my mother's picture sits. I took my copy home. I sat down in James's chair in the kitchen. I opened the book. The dedication page said, "For my mother, Andrea, who taught me how to start over at 70, who reminded me that it is never too late, who loved me out loud, finally, and let me love her back. And for my grandmother, Ruth, who loved us in a shoebox until my mother found the key." I sat in that kitchen chair for a long time. I thought about Mama Pearl. I thought about Ruth May. I thought about me. I thought about Danielle. I thought about Zora. 5 generations of Washington women. Some of them had not known how to love out loud. Some of them had loved out loud, but with conditions. Some of them were still learning. Some of them were not even born yet. But the thing I understood, sitting in that chair, was that the chain had not broken, not the way I had thought it would. The chain had not broken. The chain had transformed, because the chain was not a chain of silence. The chain was a chain of black women trying their best to love each other across a world that had not been built for us. My great-grandmother Hannah loved her daughter the best she could. Mama Pearl loved her daughter the best she could. Ruth May loved me the best she could. I loved Danielle the best I could. And now Danielle was loving Zora better than I had loved her. And Zora, one day, God willing, Zora would love her own children better than any of us had known how. The chain was not breaking. The chain was healing. And I had been part of that. Even when I had been wrong. Even when I had hurt. I had been part of it. Because I had stopped. Because I had listened. Because I had, at 70 years old, sat across a table from my daughter and said, "You are right, and I am sorry." And I had not said but. My name is Andrea Washington. I am 71 years old. I live at the same address I have lived at since 1983. I go to Ebenezer Baptist Church on Sunday mornings. I go to therapy on Thursdays. I read my mother's notebook with my daughter on Sunday afternoons. And last Saturday, my granddaughter Zora asked me a question. She asked me, "Grandma Andy, when I have a little girl, one day, when I'm old like Mommy, am I going to tell her about you?" And I said, "Baby, what do you want to tell her?" And Zora thought about it, serious the way she is. And she said, "I think I want to tell her that you were the grandma who changed. I think I want to tell her that when Mommy was sad, you listened. I think I want to tell her that you taught me how to bake cookies and how to say it's okay without a but after it. I think I want to tell her about the notebook, too, and about Great-Grandma Ruth, and about the great-great-grandma who cleaned the 3 houses. I want to tell her about all of them." I said, "Baby, that sounds like a good thing to tell her." And Zora said, "Mommy says we have to know all the mamas who came before us, so we know where we come from, so we know who we are." I said, "Your mommy is a very smart woman." Zora said, "I know. She gets it from you. If you are listening to this story, and you are a mother, or you are a daughter, or you are both, the way most of us are, I want to say one thing to you. Love is not enough. I know that is not what we are taught. We are taught that if you love hard enough, and you work hard enough, and you sacrifice enough, it will be enough. It is not enough. You have to see. You have to see the person in front of you, not the person you need them to be, not the person you are afraid they will become, not the version of them that makes your own life easier, the real person. And if you have not been seeing them, if you have been loving them in a shoebox, or loving them with conditions, or loving them from behind the glass of your own fear, it is not too late. I was 70 years old when I started seeing my daughter. 70. And let me tell you something. My mother, Ruth Mae Washington, who wrote 400 pages of love in a notebook and never said any of it out loud. My mother died when she was 62. I got 8 more years than she did. 8 more years to do what she could not do. 8 more years to stop the clock. 8 more years to look my daughter in the eye and say, "I see you. I see you. Finally, I see you." If you are listening and you still have time, do not waste the time. Open the shoebox. Make the call. Write the letter. Say the words. Do it before the clock runs out on you, the way it ran out on my mama, the way it is going to run out on all of us one day. Because the ones who come after us, our daughters, our granddaughters, the ones not yet born, they are watching. They are watching what we do, and what we do will tell them what love looks like. So let it look like truth. Let it look like listening. Let it look like sitting on a kitchen floor next to a puddle of milk and telling a little girl that she was right.